Hey, I'm Bryan Fenley, a commentator for Tennis Channel, and also do some golf, which is great because my next guest does a lot of golf. He works in it, he televises it, and we're going to share his story. Justin Harrison, entrepreneur, television producer, activist, the list goes on. He is behind a really neat project that involves a long drive competition that will be televised. Yeah, we're going to talk about that, but we're going to go beyond that as well. We're sharing not just his story when it comes to work, but beyond that. The human side of Justin will come front and center as well. And before we get started, don't forget to subscribe. Here's my chat with Justin. In a way, this conversation, we're going to be playing the golf course that is my guest, Justin Harrison, and learn everything about him. His life revolves around golf, and we're going to share his story here on the On to Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley, a golf broadcaster and a commentator for Tennis Channel. Justin is an entrepreneur in the golf space. He is a TV producer, has some exciting stuff going on in that. That might be a tease, but we're going to have some fun looking at your life and getting the whole story, the human element of you as well. Thanks for doing this, man.
Yeah, Brian, thanks for having me. I appreciate you making the time.
What is it about golf in relation to any other sport that just hits different with you internally?
So, my foray into golf was as a former college basketball player, right? You have this competitive juice that you got to get out. And the thing that drew me to golf is once you pick it up, you can play until you're 80 years old. You can play until you're dead, effectively, right? And there's no other sport in the world that you can do that, right? Like all the other team sports, individual sports, at some point your body's going to give out and you can't do it anymore. But golf is as long as you have the interest and the desire to keep doing it. And that was the thing that really like drove me to it. And then once you get into good golf circles, there's also the networking component that goes with that. There's the gambling, right? That's
Yeah.
always been a part of it. Again, right? Those competitive juices. And then this is one thing that, like, if you are a process person, like it is golf is like tailored to you, right? Like, because no matter how hard you work, with hard work you can see incremental gains, but and it's like you're this constant working progress. And so that was the thing that drew me to it.
How is your game, by the way, before we go into anything more outside of that? But your golf game right now, where are your strengths?
So short game, right? This season, I was fighting a overdraw with my driver that was putting me in a lot of penalty areas. So I've been working with a coach and bought some training aids to get the club more outside, so I can play more of a fade. But I'm about a 13 handicap.
So that's pretty solid.
Yeah.
one of these days we're going to have to go out there and play. And you're a man of your word, so I want to see how that fade is. And you see if you've gotten rid of that draw and the driver, which takes me to something that's really interesting because as you working in the golf space and your relationships, and then the driving of the golf ball is a sport in itself, and it's something that for you resonates deeply with you considering some of the things that you're working on.
Yeah, man. So in as a producer of different type of events and experiences, I found myself in the TV production space producing an upcoming long drive competition called the Rainmakers for ESPN. And this is one of those things that if you told me 3 years ago that I'd be in long drive, there'd be no effing way, right? I
Wow.
would never have believed it. But my background is actually in producing music festivals. I owned a music festival in the Washington D.C. area for 4 years, and that's entertainment, right? What drew me to long drive was of all the aspects of the game of golf, and you can really break it down. It's driving, it's your irons, it's your short game, etc. Right? The part that is the most entertaining, right, is people hitting the ball far. Right? If you watch TV coverage of the PJ Tour, like they're showing putting, right, because that's the scoring, and then they're showing people hitting drives off the tee. And I look at long drive as the thing that if you, whether you're a novice or, a person who, is really into golf, seeing somebody hit the ball 300 yards is attractive and it's something they would be interested in. And so that's what, pulled me into taking my experiences from producing, music festivals, entertainment, and finding vehicles to do that in long drive.
So you said that, and it's true. We watch golf on television and we're in awe of how far these guys and these gals they can drive the golf ball. But your television viewing experience is going to be a little bit different here. And you come from someone, like you said, who has worked in festivals, but as a storyteller, as someone who's really deeply invested in the community as well, what is the intersection like of golf, TV, and then what you're working on in the community? Because you're an activist as well.
Yeah, so kind of give you my full background in how I got into golf, which then got into long drive, right? So, 2019, let's say 2018, I really got the golf bug, right? I found myself in a circle of older gentlemen who played every Sunday, a competitive skins game, right?
Uh,
And that really like pulled me into the sport. And then 2019, the I had this idea around putting together a charity golf tournament that brought diverse communities together to raise money for the Obama Foundation, My Brother's Keeper Alliance. One of the things that having the opportunity to play in a lot of charity golf tournaments, right? There's always great initiatives, whether it's cancer research, funds for veterans, et cetera. And I hadn't found, especially in our DC area, a lot that was working to put money in the community of young boys and girls of color. And so I was fortunate enough to have some relationships where we were able to partner with My Brother's Keeper. In 2019, we did the very first tournament at TPC Potomac at Avenel, where they have the Wells Fargo Championship. And so that was a great opportunity and a great success. And then 2020 came around, right? We had the pandemic and we couldn't actually do our charity event. So, I was sitting at home watching Golf Channel one night late and they were playing reruns of Long Drive and they had one in Atlantic City. And I was like, that was really cool. Like, and you can see the boardwalk behind them, you know what I mean? Like, it was just really cool visual. And I was thought like, well, what if somebody did that on the National Mall, right? Um,
wow.
and then, the idea came about and then, I called Events DC, which in our area is our sports and tourism board. One of my very good friends was the head of sports and entertainment for them and we came up with this idea of like doing a long drive tournament on the National Mall, and because the earth like stood still, we were able to get the National Park Service to say yes. They were like, sure, you can do it. And then we called up Golf Channel and said, hey, we have this crazy idea. And at that time they were looking for content, so they said yes. And we got rolling, and within, it was so funny. It was August 10th. I'll never forget it. August 10th, 2020. I sent the email to Vince or to Golf Channel. Hey, this is the idea we have. They said yes, and then we executed the event in like September 28th
Oh my
of
goodness.
2020. It was like a 6-week whirlwind of putting this all together, and we reached out to um, some of the top names in long drive, right? But the focus was to make it about diversifying the sport in raising money for charity. So we had Maurice Allen, Tim Burke, Joshua Jackson, Chris Hall. And then also, this was the first idea of, long drive was typically an individual sport. We wanted to make it a team based concept with also men and women competing together. So then we had some of the top women in the game: Alexis Belton, Cassie Myers, Mary Driscoll, and Shasta Everhart from the LPGA Tour. We paired them up as teams and had a competition, and it was unique in its kind. And it was an opportunity to really showcase the entertaining side with a charity focus for long drive.
So you've put all of these things together and you're only going to grow. So what is the next step? The growth mindset look like for you in taking something that clearly has an appeal, and then taking it to the next stratosphere.
So after we finished producing that event and it aired, we took a step back and we were like, there's something here, right? And at that time, today's actually an interesting day because they just made the announcement for the World Long Drive Tour and the Professional Long Drive Association have merged and they're coming back as an official tour. But at that time, it was the both businesses were pretty dormant at the time, and so what I saw was an opportunity to look at long drive for what it is. It wasn't necessarily, not as a sport, but just as pure entertainment. It's like if you had to take the slam dunk contest in the NBA, right, or the home run derby, right, and how do you gamify it, and then add a charity component, right, that make it a vehicle for good. And then if you're trying to take the game of golf and appeal it to a broader audience, then that last layer is adding celebrity athletes from other sports who are, in the one percentile of athleticism, right? Most of these, if you watch, if you see any program, even the American Century one that they have in Lake Tahoe, a lot of these guys can hit the shit out the ball, right?
Oh
But
yeah.
like because they're but then when it comes to chipping and putting and stuff like that, that's like where the
Yeah.
nuance of the game is. But you give them an open field, they can all hit the ball 300 yards. So let's take them and pair them with professional long drivers and team them up for great causes and great charities and have them compete in unconventional spaces, right? So when we look at golf, beyond just being able to play golf and experience golf on a golf course, let's put it on the national mall, right? And to really make it cool. And so that's what we came about with this concept of Rainmakers and in our partnership with ESPN to turn this into a TV series.
What do you want people to take from this series?
Well, there's a for me, there's a couple of missions uh, to use this competition series as an opportunity to get younger kids involved in the game, right? Because again, the golf is the overarching mission, the social mission that's narrative right now is growing the game, right? And again, just like 11-year-old will see somebody hit the ball far and be like, "Ooh, I want to go do that." Top golf, right? What
Yeah.
is everybody doing, right? They're trying to smack the ball as far as they can, and then they'll learn the nuances of how to hit it straight. But first part, like I just want to see the ball go far. I think long drive has a vehicle to do that to grow the game. The second part is diversifying the sport, right? I think that for our intention with this property is to showcase African Americans, Latinos, people who come from other worlds and have their own respective audiences, women, right? Uh, the bring them into the sport and in the sport of long drive and show this property as a diversity and inclusion part. And then the last part is, how do we raise money for some worthy causes and do some good in our communities? When we did our inaugural Capital Long Drive Classic, that's what it was called when we did it in Washington, D.C. We did a clinic with the first 2 year Greater Washington and also the kids from the My Brothers Keeper Alliance in our local area, where at East Potomac Park, which is our golf course, the municipal golf course in DC, that's right near the National Mall. We had about 40 kids come out. They had the opportunity to work one-on-one with the professional golfers, right? We did a fireside chat where all the golfers talked about their story and their experiences getting into the game, right? And you never the power of seeing somebody who looks like you, right, doing something you never thought about doing, like those exposure opportunities could really impact somebody's life, right? That kid that came out when they're 10, hopefully they'll remember it when they're 18 or when they're 25 and they go, they're in their first job and they're like, hey, we're doing a golf outing, and they can reflect back on that time and maybe, that experience when they're 10, they decided to pick up the club and they felt comfortable in that environment 16 years down the line. You know what I mean?
You're creating those priceless experiences for those, and the accessibility of the sport. When they see it and that they're around it, they're more inclined to want to be a part of it. And you're helping that happen in such a big way. And all of this is possible due to something you said earlier, Justin, is relationships.
Hmm.
It's building these relationships and then growing them. What is your way of building relationships and how you have presented yourself in a way that has allowed you to expand and to do so many things?
Well, that's I couldn't, to go from having to watching Golf Channel on a random night at like 2 o'clock in the morning to getting to a point where we have a partnership with ESPN to produce a series. It took a lot of people saying yes, right? And that is it also on the other side, there were a lot of people that said no, right? Like I haven't even got into, in between doing it and trying to get it to hear all the people we pitched, all the brand partners. But, you know, to get people to say yes to your why, it takes a lot of relationships. It is that's really where how you advance your cheese or move initiatives forward. So, those are things that I have had to be very cautious, like intentional about,
Yeah.
right? And a lot of it is sharing, our why. It's not necessarily like ROI driven in terms of making a bunch of money, right? Like obviously you want to build profitable endeavors, but as much as you can to bring as many people into the tent that again says yes to your why,
Yeah.
and they can feel like they're part of it, and that's the most important part. That's the relational part.
Before golf became everything to you and what it means to you, when you were a child, what was your why then?
My why as a child, wow, that's a really good question. I guess to play like playing basketball to like make it to the NBA and impress girls. I guess like like most kids. But I mean, I grew up in a household where my mom had always put me. We always did community work, right? So like, and I went to Catholic schools from when I was a young kid, and service is always part of the curriculum when you go to Catholic school. So I guess it was kind of embedded in me from those times of trying to as much as you can to build endeavors that obviously have economic return but also can like do good in the process. I think that that's always been part of the DNA of the stuff that I worked on.
What was the return, even just emotionally, of you getting to go to the White House?
Oh wow. I guess I got to you teed that up, so I got to give the full background of the story. So like I said, as I said, I played college basketball, and I was fortunate enough to play in a really good pickup league. We had a league that we would play at 5:45 in the mornings on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Gonzaga High School, which is a big
Yeah.
athletic powerhouse in the DC area. Anyway, but in our circle, we had some really prominent political people, right, that would play, right? It's 5 o'clock in the morning, right? Like, when you get up. So everybody wanted to play before they had to go to work. And over 10 years, we played in this league. And, uh, we had a tight knit group that got picked through some key people to be President Obama, his part of his basketball circle,
Wow.
while he was a president of the United States. And I was fortunate enough to play a couple times at the White House in 3-on-3 pickups, and we got invited to, we would when he wanted to play, we were available to be part of his basketball circle, and that was an amazing opportunity to get the fellowship with the president when kind of he was off in his downtime, right? He just wanted
Yeah.
some good competitive hoops, right, and to be around the guys. That's when we were together, and then um, the power of network, right, and building those relationships, right, like and golf is kind of like basketball. Whereas once you compete and in with people, right, you kind of see their true colors, right? You see how they when they're battle tested,
Yeah.
right? How do they react, right? How are they a teammate, etc. And those environments form bonds that, while they're personal, can also become professional, right?
Yes.
And that obviously everybody talks about that, right? About golf, and I think the golf used to be just kind of like the country club aspect of golf, and like, if you had money and you were playing at the country club, you would just naturally network with people.
Sure.
But I can't tell you how many times, you go to set up for a tea time for two or one on a random Friday afternoon, you get paired up with somebody, and you have this 4 hour conversation
Yeah.
with people, and you're like, holy shit, like this is person's really interesting. I thought about, like, you know we had a chance to play with a guy who was 92. This is like
Wow.
in October. 92. This dude shot an 84. He's always shot below his age. And he was
Oh,
just like a wealth of stories, right? Like, and older yeah, he was just a wealth of stories. And so, like, when you get, that's the things that golf has as well.
wow. Yeah. So it's cool how it's all come full circle from you basketball wise to the golf sector. But before we deviate back to golf, what kind of player on the court is Obama?
Hyper competitive, really good, baseline jump shot,
Uh,
he would always have a formidable team, right?
yeah, around him. Yeah.
Around him, right? And so, one of the things that was known amongst our group is you had to play hard and you had to play the right way in order for you to get invited back, right? So,
Ah.
so, there's no, hogging the ball. You move the ball, you set screens. You play good defense, because, like, when his time is viable. So he wanted to make sure, like, people played the right way, but hella competitive.
I like
And
it.
and he would if he wins, he would let everybody know his team won.
How would he rub it in? He would just tell everybody and remind them.
Yeah, recount the record. You know what I mean? What's the recap of the day? Kind of let's summarize what happened today. My team, won the majority of the games, and there's Arnie Duncan, who was the Secretary of Education. He played at Harvard and played basketball in Australia. I mean, at 40 plus years old at the time, this dude may be one of the best basketball players in the DC area, and so Arnie was always on the president's team, and he always made sure that he was competitive.
I like the fundamentals aspect of it too. You're only going to play if you're setting ball screens. You're a selfless player out there. I think oftentimes people forget about that. Everybody wants to be the hero, but if that happens, you're the zero, right, on the team.
Yeah.
It's all team connected. I want to leave you with one more golf question here. And Justin Harrison is with me. I'm Bryan Fenley. If you could play golf with anybody that has meant the world to you, who would you like to play 18 with?
Wow, that's a great one. Obviously, Tiger, right? I mean, that was so my, my I didn't pick up golf until I was really start playing until I was in my 20s. That was the first time I got my first set of clubs. But my relationship to golf was, what Tiger came out in 1995, 1996, right? Was that about it?
Yeah.
My grandmother and I would watch every Sunday, and that was her thing. She was like, "We're watching Tiger on Sunday." And if, again, if you kind of think about your life, or my life full circle, it was almost fitting that this would come around and I'd be doing something in the golf world, because that was, my grandma passed away from cancer in 2010, but that was like my one of my fondest memories of her was watching Tiger, in his rise, and that was our Sunday ritual, and so obviously Tiger would be up there. Um, yeah, that would be the one.
You let me take you down to one more question. I said that was going to be my last, but I couldn't resist. You mentioning your grandma and the impact that she's had on you. In a way, can you see it? And in what way, how? That what you're doing now is a way to remember her?
Yeah, my grandma was a charitable person. She was always involved in the community. Um, her paper cover was red, right? So that was the other part. She would wear like her red on Sundays. So funny. Um, she loved competitive sports and stuff like that. And so it's actually but you bring it together like this again. This is
Yeah,
kind of how life works. You know what I mean? This
yeah.
Those moments, those memories when you're young, and everything is experiences and exposure, right? That's one of the reasons why I've been fortunate enough in my life that my parents put me in environments where I had exposure opportunities where you can go in certain rooms and certain circles, feel confident and feel comfortable no matter where you were, right? Um, I know that for a lot of kids, particularly kids of color, if they have those exposure opportunities when they're young in the game of golf, those are force multipliers when they
Yeah.
get older, you know? And so, that's kind of, I was fortunate enough to have it. That's my way of passing it down to the next generation is through these endeavors.
And through these endeavors, we're going to see it. The Rainmakers with ESPN and all that you're going to do from there and on in golf. And I can't wait to see it all. It's exciting stuff, and I'm waiting for it to fully bloom. And I know that it's just a matter of time until we get to see it all unfold. Justin Harrison, I'm Bryan Fenley. Justin, thanks so much, man, for letting us take a trip into your mind, talk about what you're working on work wise, but as you know, we went well beyond that. And I think we went holes 1 through 18 in your life, and we might have shot under par.
I think so. I think so. I'm put this in my handicap on my scorecard.